Good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of Watch Science. I am Michael Michaels. This is Sequan. How you doing, brother?
Good to be back.
Good to see you.
Again.
Always good to see you.
It was a good
show last week.
We had a great show a couple weeks ago. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We had a lot of feedback with it. We talked about dive watches. We did a lot of water testing, and I hope we were able to explain why service costs what it does by showing just the length of time it takes just to do a simple, we call it simple, water test on a timepiece. Everything's time involved, everything's time sensitive. It's not just, here we change the gaskets, your watch is water resistant. A lot of people rely on their watches. They rely on this stuff as far as for diving, for different purposes. And we have to maintain that high level of standard. We have to maintain. It's not just a matter of changing gaskets, but everything that goes into the watch and the testing of the watch is very, very critical to the integrity of the movement and everything else, because the container of the watch actually just is what contains the movement, and it protects the movement, houses the movement. Once the movement's compromised by any kind of moisture, then we have issues. We have service issues.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of it is sometimes like you go to a fancy restaurant, you wait for 45 minutes, you get a really, really nice meal. But when you buy a watch, it's so quick, so you don't really know like what's going into this watch. You don't see the guy who's working every day, and the same thing comes to repair. A lot of guys or ladies, I should say too, they send in the watch to repair. It's gone for a month or so, and they're like, "Oh, what's taking so long?" I think a lot of people don't know how the sausage is made. Let's say that.
There you go. I like that. The sausage, or in this case, how the scotch is made.
Yeah.
So, as always, cheers. And we also we had a couple of questions came in last week too about what happens when a water test fails. We test the watches. The cases are tested 4 different times. They're tested in the vacuum tester first, the dry test, and then they're going to go into a vacuum test, wet test if it's a Rolex. Then we go into the pressure test, which we demonstrated last week, and the tester we have right behind us here on the Roxer.
That was fun.
And it was fun. And then we go on to the hot plate and everything. So these tests, they all indicate something. Not every test is 100% successful. We do have failures on that. We test the watch first without the movement in the case. Once it's done and we're confident, then we case the movement and we retest it. We don't test it to a rated depth unless it's a dive watch. Dive watches are tested to rated depth. Not every watch is. We just test them again because the integrity of that case has already been checked. But again, if the watch is actually going to be used for a dive purpose, if it's an ISO rated watch, we are going to test that watch to its rated depth. I did one this last week, posted on Instagram as well. It was Omega Popov.
The best Instagram in the business, by the way. If you're a watch nerd, you follow Mike Michaels and you see the coolest. You've seen the brains of everything out there. It's
when
amazing.
I see stuff cool, that's when I post it.
Yeah, only the best things.
It's a lot of fun. So that was some of the questions. We had other questions about screw-down crowns. How come people, not all brands, use screw-down crowns?
That's a good question, actually.
And because you don't always need it. Just because a watch is rated to a certain depth, it's going to pass that certain depth. It's going to pass more than that depth. The main thing you don't want to do is wind your watch, obviously set your watch, pull the crown out, go into the second position, anything. When you're in the water, when you're near the water, leave the watch alone. Especially don't use your pushers, because anytime you use your pushers, you risk injecting water into the case.
Yeah, I think
it's just one drop.
Only the Breitling M2000 with the magnetic pushers is probably one of the only ones that I feel comfortable actually using. And even then I do it just because they said I could do it. Like it wouldn't be something I'd do on a daily basis because you just never want to take a chance.
Exactly too, because the thing is when you're underwater, you really don't need a stopwatch while you're underwater. Yeah. You're timing your dive. You don't need to split your dive into multiple time segments.
I thought about it. You're right.
So it's kind of a gimmick, I guess. You have to say at some point, but at the same time, they were able to manufacture it, and it works.
Yeah. I had a question with one of my clients this week, and I thought it'd be good to ask you. How does somebody know? Let's say they're going to a watchmaker, they're in like a small town. How do you know that somebody is certified or can work in their piece, and like they won't they won't risk it going in some hands that they're not sure what's going to go on there?
Ask. The first thing you could do, it's like when you're going to a doctor. If you don't trust that doctor, don't go to him. It's the same thing. If you don't trust your watchmaker, find another one. We have, where we are at in our shop, we have all our certificates on the wall. We're very proud of the certificates that we've earned, be it Omega, be it different brands. We have these certificates up because we earned them. We're proud of those certificates, and we go back and get those recertified every few years when the brands call for it. So we try to stay up on the trends. the news always change on the websites, be it Omega, Rolex, anything else. They come out with new directives all the time on how to test watches, how they want the watches tested, what the new parameters are. And if your watchmaker's not sticking or staying up to the times with all that,
it can, some things could fall through the cracks there.
Anybody can service a Rolex. Anybody can service a Breitling. Anyone can service, an Omega. But to do it right, you need the training to do it right, and you need to know your watchmaker is certified in what they're doing. AWCI is one of the places you can go, and you can actually type in and see what your watchmaker is. You can put in your zip code and find out what watchmakers are in your area and what they're certified in, what they specialize in, because that's the other thing too. It's knowing who specializes in what. Just because you have one certification doesn't mean you can work on a lot of different watches.
Yeah. Before we go on, Watch Yoda. Shout out to everybody in the chat, but Watch Yoda requires us to do a wrist check.
There we go.
So let's do one. You want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first because we're going to follow up with yours in a different way. Okay, so I'm wearing my Tudor, my Heritage, which I absolutely love, and I have it on Everspan. And absolutely love the watch, love the color combination. It's loud, it's fun, it's very, very comfortable. I love it. And again, this is the ETA powered movement with the DD module, which I'm a big fan of those modules. Everybody knows that. So
yeah, just a classy watch, and I love that you have it on this rubber strap because a lot of people, see it on the bracelet or NATO, and this is to me one of the most versatile, fun watches with a great heritage, great do anything, wear anywhere type of watch. It's really, really great.
What do you have on?
Today I have descendant of one of my favorite watches, the Super Avenger. This one is the Super Avenger 2. And I thought we fit into wear this one because this is powered by 7750 base Value movement. I put on a brown croc tonight. I really love switching up watches from how you have you see this on a bracelet a lot, but on a nice brown croc, it really just changes the whole look of the watch.
That is a big watch.
Yeah, it's a big puppy. It's 49. I think I can pull it off.
So what I want to demonstrate real quick while you're holding that up, this is the ETA-7750 that is inside of that.
Isn't that insane?
So if we can get. There's the movement that is actually inside that watch. And this is the base ETA-7750, and there's gives you a pretty good example of what's going on inside that case. And to take it one step further, what we're going to do is we are actually going to take this ETA-7750, and we're going to do a complete disassembly on this tonight.
Live.
And yeah, this is not going to be a recorded one. This is not going to be a pre-recorded one. So many people have asked for this, and I thought, what can go wrong but a spring can go flying? But I want to do it live, and a lot of people have asked for the 7750. I want to be able to show some of the issues with this watch and just some of the corrections that have been made with it too. This is a Tudor base. Came out of I believe it was a big block that it came out of.
Yeah.
So this is the movement we're going to tear down today, and it's tear down for full service. So we're going to be diving into that in just a few minutes.
I think this is the first, right? The first live teardown.
This is the first live teardown that I've done. So this is going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to test the camera work here pretty soon. But if you have any questions, do we have anything going on?
I got a quick, interesting question from Rob Dixon. He's wondering, comparing the new Tudor in-house movements to the other movements of the past. Is there a big comparison? Is there one reason to go left or right on that?
On the three-hand Tudor movements, we have not serviced those yet because they're still under warranty. Anything that's under warranty, they go back. And the reason they go back, we've talked a lot about this, a lot of different brands, when they introduce a brand, all the factory service comes back for the first couple of years, and it's not because they don't want the watchmakers fixing them, but they want to know what's going on. They want to see the failures that happen and why this watch is coming back prematurely. So they're building a database, and they're trying to figure out how they can correct the movement. So when those movements come back, a lot of times they get upgraded. The new Tudor movement, from everything I hear about it, is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's just it's a powerhouse movement.
Yeah, I haven't had any bad reports on it.
I haven't had anything negative on it. It's thin. It has a hell of a power reserve. It's supposed to be a very, very well designed movement. It has like a sandblasted finish on it. It closely resembles the new Rolex movement, the 32. So I don't know how tight it is or not.
Yeah.
And then of course in the new Heritage, in the Chronos, they're using the B01 derivative of the BO1.
Yeah, which is an interesting move, I think. BO1 was a nice,
and they're sharing
steady.
because the Tudor in-house movement is actually going into 3-hand Breitlings now as well.
Yeah, you know, and I like that. Just a quick side. I like to see, you know, brands working together again, because there's really no reason to have Breitling spend the money, the R&D to make its own 3-hander, because nobody's really gonna.
Well, they did go through a process where they designed their own 3-hand movement.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they made very, very few of them, and I can't remember. I'd have to check back with Robert Flood, who was on about a month ago or so. But there was, I know they made very few of those watches, and I had to think it was cost that stopped them from actually, you know, putting the watch into production. Because I had wondered if, when they were doing that, and that was when I was going through my Breitling training, if that was actually the Tudor movement, but it wasn't. It was actually in-house, entire in-house 3-hand movement.
Oh, so you're one of the few who's actually seen it.
I haven't seen the movement, but I know about that. Yeah. So it's one of those little legends that are out there. Whether or not they produce the watches for sale, I don't even know that.
That'd be interesting. Maybe like 20 years from now, we see one pop up in an auction. Like, oh, where did this movement come out?
It is.
Oh,
exactly.
You heard it here first.
So with that, I'm going to slide next door.
Yeah, we're trying to pivot here.
Sequan's going to go ahead and man the chat box. Anyone has any questions about the 7750 while I'm doing this, I'm going to do my best to try to describe the components as I tear it down. It's going to be a relatively quick teardown. It's a simple movement. I know this movement doesn't have a lot of issues. This particular one, it came in, it was actually running very good. I wanted to do the service though, and I wanted to do it for everybody on the air. So I'm going to slide over and
I'll slide a little bit too. Let's do a shimmy.
And we'll do a little dance over here.
That kind of works. Should I slide more? That kind of works.
And with that, I'm just going to roll my sleeves up, and we're going to dig into here.
And I'll just do a quick shout out to everybody in the room. We got Hale, Bob, Eli, Robert Dixon, regular person, Watch Yoda, top 5 fan of the crew, always there. Peter B in the house. I know Reaganomics is somewhere out there. Make sure you tune in on Sunday, guys. We got a great show coming for you from the Dial-In guys. Who else do we have here? There's Zachary Rigo, Rum Porridge. You know, keep sending your questions, guys. Let's have some fun. This is so cool to actually do a live teardown. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like this.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever done one either. So I'm going to try to describe everything that's going on with this. Again, this is a base ETA-7750, and I'm going to just describe a couple of the components real quick as we get to this. We're looking at the dial side. I've obviously removed the dial. And we talk about some of the problems with the ETA-7750. One of them is right here. This is the calendar drive wheel. And when we see it a lot of times. You have your watch, if the calendar is changing at 4 o'clock, and for some reason it always ends up being 4 o'clock, this is the reason. This wheel actually breaks loose. It's a 2-part wheel that actually separates from the bottom. But this isn't the problem. The wheel isn't the problem. The wheel is the weak point in the link. The problem is actually underneath here, which I'll get to, and I'm going to demonstrate how we check that. A couple other things we see here. Even though this is a single date, we still have the jumper spring. This is jumper spring for the day, if this watch had a day disc on it. This is not a day calendar. This is just a date only. But they put this on all the watches from the factory, and again, this would be your day driver. And these 2 pins right here are actually indexed underneath, which I'll demonstrate as well when we're doing the teardown. But if I could show real quick, we are coming around, and I'm going to show the calendar change, and we're going to do a quick check here. So we're going to get the calendar change. The calendar's going to jump. And as soon as the calendar jumps, I'm going to back it up a little bit. I'm going to go into quick set, and I'm actually checking the clutch. And the clutch you can't see yet because it's actually underneath this. This is our quick set wheel. It's actually underneath here. And so it's very, very smooth, so I know I don't have any problems with that. If that wheel locked up, again, not this one you can see right here, we'll get to it in a few minutes, but if this locks up down here, this is the wheel that breaks. So a lot of times, if watchmakers aren't aware of that, if they don't do the service properly, they're going to come over here, they're going to replace this wheel. Sometimes they'll even just move the wheel from here, bring it over one. They'll do that, but they're not solving the problem, and that's where the issue comes in. So with that, I'm going to remove these 2 plates right here. I'm going to remove the calendar plates, remove the calendar disc, and then we're going to go ahead and pull. You know what? Actually, I'm going to do it a different way on this, just because for time. I'm going to pull the entire calendar plate off, and we'll see what's going on underneath there. And so I've already gone ahead and I've sharpened my screwdrivers and everything. I'm going to pop a loop on.
This is like watching a master surgeon get to work.
Visit Mr. Doers. And we're going to go.
and I was actually talking to Mike a little bit earlier, guys, and I'd say if you have a chronograph on right now, and it's, you know, not an in-house movement, above 2,200 and, you know, below 15,000, it's probably a value 7750 in there. It's probably one of the most commonly used.
Millions of them.
Yeah, it's amazing to think the numbers. Like, really honestly, look at your wrist. You have a chrono, it's probably a value 7750 on your wrist. And that's to just show the testament of such a real industry workhorse. You know, you could say so many great brands have been able to package great cases, great other complications on top of it as well.
And I'm doing this how I would normally do a regular service, except I am pulling the entire bridge off instead of pulling off the components first. And that's the only difference I'm doing right here. But we are going to go ahead, open this up, and take a peek at what's going on. And we're going to see both the calendar drive underneath, and we're going to see the hour recording mechanism. And that's really the only risk I'm running right here is popping the spring on the calendar drive, or on the hour recording mechanism.
Oh, this is the big moment right here. Does it fly?
This is one of them. We have two big moments in here. Come on off. There we are. Okay, we look at the back side of the bridge. There's really nothing here, so that's why I just went ahead and pulled that off. The only thing that's on here is the quick set and the jumpers. Again, this would all come apart and be cleaned, but for time restraints, we're just going to go ahead and pull that off. Now, let's take a quick look at what we have underneath here. Let's see what the parts are. All right, we've got a few different components. We have our calendar drive wheels right here. This is for our date. This would be for our day. Now, this is the hour recording mechanism right here. And this is the brake that actually stops it. This is the hammer that's going to reset. And this is the spring that I mentioned can actually jump. And I'm going to be very gingerly take this little spring off and hope nothing flies and a couple things pop, but we're okay.
Oh, wasn't too bad. Look at that.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. And here, this is our hour recording wheel. And this actually has a little clutch on the bottom, and this drives directly off the barrel. So this is constantly being driven off the barrel, and then what happens is the brake comes in contact with the side of it and actually just arrests the wheel. It just stops it, holds the wheel. When we start the chrono, it's going to release, and it's going to let the chronograph run. So it's either stopped or it's running. But this is, again, very important that this is lubricated properly, or it's an amplitude killer. And again, the way I'm putting the parts in here, the components, this is how I would normally do things for cleaning. I separate both my brass and my steel. I'm going to go ahead and do the normal checks, even though I know this one is okay, on these calendar drive wheels. I'm going to grab the calendar drive wheel, and I'm actually going to try to turn it. And this should not turn, and it's not. This one's nice and tight. So we're going to go ahead and throw that right in the cleaning basket. And same thing here. Because I don't know which is which, these are actually identical wheels. I'm going to check them both, and they're both good. And when I talked about the alignment, this is actually a little alignment right here. And it's just it's a little index. And what you have is the first index here off the day drive points to it, and the one off the date points to the tip, just the tip of the of your day drive. And that's all they do. And as long as you have that right, then you know they're gonna sync over at the same time. Okay, we have our hour wheel, and get brass hour wheel. If we have any other complications, they will put a drive on here. If we have a GMT or anything like that, they'll put added components on top of this. And we have our free cannon pinion, which is actually what the minute post is connected to. We have an intermediate wheel and our minute wheel. This is the brake right here. It's a plastic brake, and depending on the version, we actually replace these every time, and this one is the new version. They make 3 different versions of this. One has multiple fingers. This one has 2 fingers. I'll see if I can get it in there. And we have 2 fingers down at the little bottom on the tab that actually engages with the hour recorder. And then there's a 3rd version that actually is made out of steel, but that is only used when we have bronze hour recording wheel. This is the hammer, and the hammer is what is going to reset the chronograph. And again, the movement holder I'm using here does not have any pushers. I use the pushers on a movement holder when I'm actually doing my reassembly. And then this right here is what I wanted to really demonstrate, because this is the intermediate wheel right here that I was talking about. If this wheel's not serviced properly, try to get the glare out of there. There we go. If this isn't serviced properly, that's what actually causes the failure in the date drive wheel. So to check that, I'm actually just going to gently pinch it, and I'm going to turn, and the wheel underneath should turn, and it was turning beautifully. So it's very free, very loose. Everything's great.
Now, do those have a certain, like, they go away every few years? Those just kind of burn out?
Not those. They really don't burn out. What happens is, more times than not, the watch gets cleaned. It's not lubricated properly, and then it gets put back in a service. Then after a year or two, it locks up. And someone goes to do the calendar change. They're between 10 and 2, and they either break their date disc or they break the wheel off.
I had that grinding.
Okay. When we talk about tension, we talk about tension on the cannon pinion, which is actually, the cannon pinion is the friction that couples and decouples our gear train to the time train. And this right here is the cannon pinion on a 7750. And this is actually a clutch. Again, it's another clutch that when we're going through our setting, it actually turns. Another very important part, it must be lubricated properly. We do clean it. It gets lubricated 2 different components, the bottom and the top of it. It's just very, very important that it's treated properly. And I'm going to go ahead and remove it using my lifts, just very gingerly, like that. And if I could show you on the bottom real quick, see if we can get in there and see that. There, you can actually see that's actually the clutch version. It's a 3-finger clutch, and that's what actually spins on the bottom. So it's a 2-piece component, and that's what gives us our friction when we're setting the hands. If that friction is not correct, if it's too light, then the hands will actually stop and the calendar won't change. So it's very, very important. The one other thing I'm going to do while I'm on the dial side here is I'm actually going to pop the jewels out. And I opened up the little, and pop our jewels out. We got a little.
I have a quick question from Peter B here. Are the gear wheels in this piece, the gear wheel teeth stamped out in the die or turned on a lathe?
The wheels in this, from my understanding on the ETAs, they are stamped out. They're high precision, but they are stamped out.
But they're...
Yeah. I am not going to remove the setting on this yet because I want to be able to let the power down on the watch. So I've got everything in here. Everything's torn down. I even took the balance jewels out of the dial side, which are the upper jewels. They call it the upper jewels because the dial side is the upper side.
Oh, that makes sense.
It's one of those things, though, that'll trip you up, and you'll see it on a question, too. What's the upper, what's the lower? So now we're actually working on the lower side of the watch, which, even though as a watchmaker, this is the side we see more often. What do we have here? We have the oscillating weight. Okay? So...
I actually had a question on the oscillating rotor there. Zach Riga asked, is the rotor of the 7750 actually as noisy as most people say? Or if so, does that maybe because of people have, just a piece is rocking too long? What causes the rotor to be a little bit more noisy than another one?
The 7750, this actually has a replaceable bearing in the center of it. And what happens is the bearings actually, they can come loose. And I could bring another tool, and we can actually demonstrate that, how we test these. But there's a few different ways, and I might be able to do it on here real quick. Let's see if we can test this. Okay, so we could test the oscillating weight bearing.
Wow.
This one's actually very free, but I also want to test the side play of it. So I want to see if it's actually going to wobble on the bearing. And I can feel a little bit of movement, but there's really no wobble. This bearing, again, it is replaceable. It is very easily replaceable with the proper tools. It just has a nut on the top here. You snap the nut off and it comes off. One of the important things, though, when you do your service is lubrication of this bearing. It has to be lubricated properly.
What's the good jazz up
Otherwise,
too much
it's just too noisy, and that's where you get the noise from.
Again,
improper lubrication.
There you go. Lubrication is key.
Lubrication is key. Now I'm going to remove one piece here. If I could show everybody real quick what's going on here. We have our Chronograph Bridge, which is on top and holds all the chronograph components down. This also holds some of the reversing components down. It has a couple springs, and the first spring I'm going to remove out of here is this one right here. And it's a little tiny, looks like a little paper clip. It's a very, very light spring, and this is what actually engages and disengages the actual chronograph drive. when you start or stop the chronograph. So we're going to take that out, and that part gets cleaned as well. This is the hammer spring right here. And the hammer spring is the largest spring here, and this is what throws your hammer back down when you tell it to release and go back to 0. This spring is under a lot of tension, and so it's going to throw itself down. So when you go ahead and you hit your reset on that, you're releasing this.
Swinging back.
Yeah, you're releasing this, and it's just slamming down. So it's very cool, very cool. And we're going to go ahead and we took all the tension off now. So I still cannot let power down because I have the reversers on here. So I'm going to take off the Chronograph Bridge, and we'll actually see what's going on underneath here. Now, like I said, a lot of people have asked for this. A lot of people have asked for being able to do this on the air live. You know, I would love ideas, as always, as to what to do next. You know, what kind of teardowns you want to see, what kind of movements, you know, are people interested in seeing.
I actually got Robert Dixon was asking about Omega Caliber 321. He said he saw another watchmaker, Roger Smith, very famous as well.
Oh,
yes. He said when a Omega Caliber 321 came on his desk, it was an easy day. Would you agree, Mike?
It's a good day.
It's a good day?
You see a 321, and you know it's going to be a good day. It's not an easy day because it's a watchmaker's watch.
Yeah.
And I think Robert Smith says the same thing. It's a watchmaker's watch.
You're having fun with it.
It's not an 1861. It's a lot more adjustments, a lot more components. It's a very, very mechanical watch, which I love working on.
Yeah.
I did the full teardown on it in a 3-part segment. I want to show a couple components real quick if I can. And these are reversing components. And this is one of the points we check for wear, and it's actually just a post. It's a replaceable post that we have an intermediate wheel that goes on, and this one's actually in very good shape. And I'm just gonna, I'm looking at this very, very quickly. We're checking the tightness of the different wheels. This is the reversing wheel that actually engages and disengages the oscillating weight.
So would you say it really is just like, you know, being a doctor is all about preventative medicine?
It's preventative
It's just
medicine,
making sure everything looks clean on the takedown before you put it back together.
There's a
noticing.
few checks we're going to do. When we get a little further, I'm going to show some of the other checks, which are end shakes. Since one of the things watchmakers do before, and you do the end shake check before you lubricate as it goes back together. And that's one of the things we try to dissect what's going on with the watch as it's coming down, even though it's a routine service. If I see abnormal wear on something, there's a reason that wear's there, and I have to try to solve that.
What caused it?
Exactly. What caused that wear? I'm going to show real quick, too, if we get in here. These are our chronograph components. And we have this is our minute recorder right here. In the center, we have our chronograph wheel. And this is actually what trips the minute recorder. This is the hammer here that zeroes everything back, and that's where that big spring was. And this is our start-stop that actually engages and disengages the chronograph. And this is the drive pinion right here, which I'm going to go ahead and pull this drive pinion out and show you this cute little thing right here. This is our chronograph drive pinion. And what this does is it actually flips in or flips out to engage or disengage the chronograph as you tell the watch to. I've only seen that fail one time. This is the actual chronograph wheel, and if we look on the bottom side of it, you can actually see the finger right there at the top, and that finger is what trips your minute recorder.
Wow.
See that little finger sticking up there? And that's actually an adjustment, and that adjustment is actually made as it's going back together, the depth as to how far we're going to move that. We have our minute recorder. This is our chronograph brake. Oh, that one's trapped. Not all are trapped. There's our hammer, and that's what's going to throw all the power back. It's going to reset everything.
Approximately how many parts would you say is in a 7750?
You know what? I knew you were going to ask that, and I wish I had that answer right now off the top of my head. I don't remember. I do these all the time, and it's just, to me, it seems like 10.
Yeah, right? I know.
So it does. It seems like 10, but I know there's a lot. But there is a specific answer to that, and I wish I would have
Google it, kids.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure somebody will come up with that answer before
Yeah, I
the
know.
show's
I
over.
saw the question. I know somebody's gonna jump in there with the. I'm sure
Please.
Zachary Rigo will
Please
Google
do.
it and put it up there.
And we're going to go ahead and take out the automatic bridge, and which is our next level down, and then we'll be able to let the power off and actually show what's going on underneath here, because there's another very important check we have to do on this watch. We get 7750s back all the time where people say that the watch is not winding itself. It just doesn't do it.
Like rotor's moving, but power's not going into the barrel.
And that's the reason right there. This is the wheel that causes that. And what happens is, this is the newest version, and this is a bronze wheel, but this is the culprit. What happens, this wheel actually becomes decoupled.
Oh.
And so it looks like it's spinning, the oscillating weight's spinning, the wheel is spinning,
But it's not.
But the pinion in the center is not spinning, and that's what actually drives the ratchet wheel, which is this wheel right here with the 4 holes in it. So this actually becomes decoupled. Everything looks like it's working, but it's not transmitting the power to the mainspring.
No energy's going through.
So that's one of the big checks that we do. Depending on the age of the watch, we will just replace that most of the time and not even reuse that one. This is our operating cam, and I could probably show this still. If we show right here what the cam does before I take the spring off, there's start and stop. Right there. That's all it does. It turns that cam a few degrees, and it either engages or disengages and allows the components to come in. That's run, that's stop. And then you can see right down here, this is actually the brake, and this brake actually pinches against the chronograph wheel that's in the center, and that's what actually stops so you don't want, when you stop your chronograph, anytime, you don't want that second hand to move, and something's got to hold it. If you just disengaged it, the hand would just fall.
Oh, that'd be not good.
Because you're decoupling it.
Yeah.
So you need something to hold it in place.
As a brake.
So that's why we have, they're called brakes, and it just touches the side of that wheel.
Just to make it stay steady. Oh,
Okay.
definitely want your chronograph to
Yeah.
snap back.
And even if it's a flyback, it's still going to have a brake. So we're going to take off the cam.
I saw Nana was asking about the skull on the desk. It's not a Valkabau, it's actually a bird vise sculpture. This is what the inside of me and Mike's brain looks like. It's all vintage watch parts in there. Somehow it's working.
This is our operating cam. And it's a multi-purpose cam. It does a lot of different functions. Transmits power to the top, turns everything on and off, applies the brake, is the positive detent you actually feel when you start and stop your chronograph. It's actually, it does everything, that little part right there.
I feel like I've known it all my life.
And this right here is your start-stop spring, where it'll actually, this actually holds the cam in position. So every time that cam moves, it jumps across this little, the tip right here, and just holds it into place. Go a little further. This little dog leg here is an interesting piece, because what it does on the back side of it actually has an eccentric. And what this does, it transmits power. Excuse me. It transmits power, or it transmits an operating idea to the hour recorder. So this is what engages or disengages the hour recorder on the dial side of the movement or the top side of the movement. So it transmits everything from the lower side to the top side. We have our intermediate minute jumper, minute drive. Oh, come on, fall off there. There we are. Gets no lubrication whatsoever. There's no tension on that. And I'm going to go ahead and let the power down. And when we start looking at this, this is our ratchet wheel. This is what's holding the power on right now. And it's just, there we try to get the light right. There's our click spring right there at the bottom. This little hockey stick shaped thing is the click spring. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put power on it, and I'm going to pull the click spring away and release the power off of this watch. So we'll just gently release it. It's all the way down. I can pull it away. It's not moving any further. There's no power on the watch.
Oh.
So now I can go ahead and remove the ratchet wheel.
And the 7750 is a relatively robust movement. It's a little thicker than what I would like, but at the same time, it's very predictable when it comes to doing a service on one. You know what to look for, you know what the issues are ahead of time, you know what to check for, because we know what the weak points are. And once you service a few hundred of these, you start to know what to look for in
Kind of the back of your hand, maybe.
Yeah, where the problems are. This is actually the operating lever. So when you start and stop your chronograph, this is what you're actually engaging. You're pushing this lever.
How thick would you say that piece is?
It's not very thick. So it's actually big for a watch part.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you actually want to see a size comparison, let's see if we can. There we go. You know, we'll go on a thumbnail. How's that? So that's actually a pretty good size component.
Yeah, no, that's a big one for watches.
And it's a big piece for a watch.
Actually, on the robustness, I have Tanzil Ansari. He's wondering, what would you say robustness compared to between a Value 7750 versus a Seiko 6139?
I'm not as familiar with the Seiko movements. I haven't done one in a very, very long time. I did them years ago. The Seiko movement is an entirely different design where the bridges themselves, it's more of a full plate design, where the bridges, it's a multi-purpose bridge, where it's going to hold down not just the gear train, but it's going to hold down the chronograph components.
So structurally
two way different animals on it.
So apples and oranges there.
I can't speak too much on it because it's been so long since I've done one. You know, somebody made that comment before that you know that I don't touch enough on the Seiko movements.
Yeah.
And the reason is I don't know them that well.
Yeah.
You know, and we don't see them. I don't service them, so we really don't know them all that well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to forego taking off the crown wheel here, and the crown wheel here is what transmits the power when you actually wind the watch. So it transmits the power over to our barrel arbor. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to pull, and we had a great question that I just had emailed me the other day, and it was about using a balance tack. And if the balance tack itself, how does it, by putting a, I'm going to use one right here to demonstrate. I use a balance tack all the time. It's very, very safe. The balance tack is designed, the balance itself, the hairspring is designed to support the balance. As you can see, it really doesn't hang that low.
Not at all.
No, it hangs a little bit. The balance is not very heavy. The hairspring is heavier than you would think it is. And it's more robust, especially on an ETA. All ETA hairsprings are very, very solid. Rolex are very, very solid. Omega, everything modern, everything that runs at 28.8 has a very robust hairspring.
Something that can take a little.
Exactly.
Little
It takes a lot of manipulation. You know, I could do some little games here and and kind of show you the hairspring. You know, this is not hurting it whatsoever. So people could be horrified by this, but it's not hurting it.
See the comments.
So that was, like I said, that was a great question that came in. To me, this is one of the coolest pictures. A lot of times when I take the watches apart, this is the shot I get on Instagram. Of the different models and just how they look and how they hang different. So it's kind of cool. So I always use the balance tack just to support everything. I'm going to go ahead and remove my barrel bridge. And again, this is a 3/4 barrel bridge, and the reason they call it a 3/4, it covers the majority of the plate, but it doesn't cover the balance. On some of the old American pocket watches, it'll actually cover the entire balance as well, which was a lot of fun to work on. On the bottom side, we have a couple springs. This is our balance stop, or our hacking spring. So when you go ahead and you move the watch into the setting position, this is what actually engages into the balance, and it lives right in this little channel right there. So when you actually pull it into the setting position, it'll actually engage it. So we have our balance stop. Oh, come on. If we look at the bottom side of the bridge, we also have our operating lever spring, which we're going to take off, and it's going to fit in a little basket too. We have our bottom side of the bridge. Everything looks very clean on this watch. A little oil, this is all factory service oil, so it's sometimes a little heavier than I'd like to see. We have our barrel, which I'm going to go ahead and pull the mainspring out in a second. We have our gear train. So if we want to show the gear train on a 7750, we have our great wheel, which comes out, and this takes all the force, and this is also what drives
that pinion that I pulled off on the other side. Okay, so this goes through the movement and the pinion connects to it, and this is what gives us our tension and drives everything, drives the time.
We have our third wheel.
Rarely see any issues with these.
We have our fourth wheel, and what's interesting about the fourth wheel is it has a long pinion on it, and that's your fourth wheel makes 1 rotation a minute, and that's your second hand. So if you want to look at your watch real quick, on your 7750, you have your second hand, it's at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
This is the wheel that's directly attached to it.
Wow. And it's still so amazing to me that I'd say that movement is less than 50% of diameter
Exactly.
of the case. Now would you say that's a good thing or bad thing, or just it really doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter. It's in a very, very hefty containment ring inside the watch. And then I use the wafers, and the wafer is great for protecting the escape wheel. This is our escape wheel. It goes into the wafers, and again, it's all plastic, so it really protects it well. And again, I don't have the microscope here. I don't have anything else. I'm not doing all my balance checks. I know this watch before I even tore it down. It had good amplitude. Everything else, I know the locks are, everything's going to be right where it should be, or very, very close. I may have to make some minor adjustments. This is our pallet bridge, and hiding underneath is our anchor. We have our entry pallet, exit pallet, and again, these are actually adjustable. So the easy way to do it is to change them out, but these are adjustable in and out. These stones, we heat them up and move them to increase or decrease the lock, and that brings the amplitude up or down, and we have to check it again in 24 hours. On ETAs, we don't have to do too much because ETAs actually run at a very high amplitude. Some movements we actually have to do more adjustments on this than others.
I didn't know those stones were adjusted. So would you do that? Is that once in a while?
It's once in a while. It's not often do we see it anymore on a lot of other watches, depending on the age of the watch too.
If it's a little bit older piece, it might be that time to do a little bit of adjustment there.
And we'll show right here. This is pretty much a stripped down 7750.
I just like to say that Mike has done this in about 20 to 25 minutes or so. I'd have been here. This would have been a week-long show if we got me doing it. I actually got a question here from Jason Main, watch trader at the office. What's your favorite version of the ETA-7750? 5051, 5050, or the 53?
I'm going outside the box on that one. My favorite version is the Omega coaxial version with the column wheel.
Ooh,
and
that's a beauty.
Yeah, we don't see it too often. It's a very, very nice movement. It's a great execution. If you could ever get one of those as a collector, it's a great piece to have. They did some of the other Olympic models in it. There's a couple of dive pieces made with it. It's actually based off the 7754, I believe it is, where it has the registers at 3, 6, and 9.
Oh, versus the
3,
reverse.
6, and 9, so it has the calendar corrector up through the helium valve too. But it's a coaxial version. As far as the movement itself, the movement is beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. I've only done one service on one time, but it's really pretty. This, I want to show real quick, if I could, this is the balance jewels. This is both the cap and balance jewel itself. They are actually held together right now with lubricants, with the oil. When it goes into the cleaner, they'll actually separate. And so those go right back in. I close a little, take the stem. We'll go ahead and remove the stem from here and pull out our winding pinion. Winding pinion is right here, and our clutch wheel, which just transmits all the power and tells it what we're doing when we're turning the stem. Are we winding the watch, or are we setting the watch, or are we quick setting the watch? It actually slides in and out. So those are all the components for the ETA-7750. I'm going to go ahead and close this up, and the last thing I want to do is pull the mainspring out. Or actually, I think I'm going to have you pull the mainspring out.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh.
Yeah, really? You didn't know that was coming, did you? So I'm going to have you do this. I'm going to warn everybody here working the cameras, springs could fly. So this could be kind of fun. I'm not that concerned. Again, we change mainsprings a lot in 7750s, so I'm not concerned about it. But I'll go ahead and I'll open it up for you. I'll make it, I'll take the scary part away for you.
Yeah, make it easy.
And then I'm going to let you pull the spring out, though, so you can actually feel the tension that's in it. The 7750 itself, if we examine the barrel real quick, the barrel itself, when I talked about the hour recording drive, this is the hour recorder drive right here. Okay, it's a pinion that's on the top side of the barrel. Bottom side of the barrel has a screw for the ratchet wheel. And then also the cap actually overlaps. It's not a flat cap. It actually comes across and captures it. So I'm actually going to open this up, just give it a little bit of help with the razor blade. And we heard the pop, and it released itself. So I'm going to go ahead and take the cap off, because I don't want you to do that. I will take the arbor out, and then I'm going to let you pull the mainspring out.
Oh, wow, this is
Not what you
exciting.
expected.
Yeah, no.
This is the barrel arbor. If we show it real quick, and we're going to show the mainspring all wound up in here. We pulled one of these out a few weeks ago, and this is the barrel arbor itself right here, which holds the power. So we got the mainspring in here, and what I'm going to have you do
Let's see if I can.
I want you to hold the barrel. Don't be afraid to hold it.
Okay.
And I want you to grab the mainspring.
And just pull it
And
out?
just kind of, don't pull it out fast. Kind of pull it out and kind of let it
Unwind itself?
unwind itself. If you pull too fast, you'll see what's going to happen. You're going to make a bird nest.
Okay, let's see.
There it goes. He made a bird nest and the barrel went. You should have set that up there and you could show exactly
This
what
is
happened.
why I'm not watching.
That's exactly what happened. The barrel is somewhere in this office.
It is gone. But look how long that is. That little bird nest that I made
That was great. That's exactly what I said was going to happen, and you did it. I didn't mean to set
fell in
you
the
up
trap.
like
No,
that,
But that's amazing. I think this goes to show like how many parts work in such perfect synchronization. Because who'd have thought
Well, you
that
did a
that
great
was
job
inside
on
of the watch?
Exactly.
It's a nice
Inside
little
of the
bird
barrel.
nest. Yeah.
And I'm going to see if I can unwind this real quick just so we can show how long this actually is before, and then we'll close with that. That was great, though. I was glad I was able to do that with you.
You got me. Nobody warned me in the chat. You guys knew it was gonna happen.
I knew it was going to happen, just because I've seen it happen so many times.
I should have figured this
I
was
let
a
people
setup.
do this, and one of the things I like doing, I love letting people that never took a watch apart take a watch apart, and it's one of those fun things that.
Yeah, definitely. And if you get an opportunity to do it, sit down with a watchmaker and have some fun. Even if you get like an old vintage pocket watch on eBay for $50, get some tweezers.
Those will drive you crazy. If you want to do something like that, I recommend buying a 6497. Even as much as I hate to say it, a Oriental 6497.
There you go.
And there's your mainspring, and it's actually
Wow.
isn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's actually still pretty flat. A little more twist in there, one more twist, and we'll get that out, and we'll lay it down. And it's got a couple little squirrels in it.
Well, look at that. That's
Found
at
it.
least like a
Harrison
foot.
found the barrel.
Oh, look at that. Go, Harrison.
Good man. Good man.
Look at this thing.
So that's it. So that's our mainspring,
It's crazy.
and there's our barrel.
Look at that. We're saved.
We're saved. So there we are. We tore down the 7750 live on the air. Again, a lot of people have asked for this. We wanted to do it. It was a lot of fun. Hope everybody stuck through it. You can go back and see it, comment on it, critique it, tell me everything I did wrong. Tell me everything else. Just I've done hundreds of these movements, and I'm not in a watchmaking setting right now. I'm sitting at a table. I brought what I needed to do to take this down. So we did it. Saquon, I love having you.
It was a pleasure.
I love
This was
having you.
amazing. You did it in like maybe a half hour. You did a whole teardown.
did the whole
And I
teardown.
busted the whole mainspring right.
Now you see why I give my watchmaker shit, because they're not as fast as that.
Yeah, no. I don't know if anybody can do that fast.
With that,
Cheers, my friend.
We're out of here. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Good one.